This bike is a bit of a mystery. Nobody can figure out how to fix it. So this is a 2009 Kawasaki Kx250f. So the seller stated he picked this bike up beginning of summer, ran great, no issues whatsoever. He said then it started having some issues. So the first thing he noticed was that coolant was leaking out of the overflow. So he took the top end off, bought all new gaskets, bought a brand new bicycle piston for it, installed that, put everything back together, and this thing would not fire. Yeah, that's a no-go. Yeah, very clear oil. You've got the blue coolant in there. Let's see if it's flowing. It looks good. It looks wet. Looks like it's getting gas to it. Pretty low. 32 psi. Right. Yep. Bring it back like it should. That one's pretty tight. So I think we've got a problem with the intake valves here. We adjusted the intake valve on this bike. And it actually fired up for the first time in like 4 months. And it just sounded horrible. It was leaking coolant. And it was really hard to start back up after starting. So that led me to believe that timing was off. So we looked at the cams, took those out, and I think we found the problem. So the hole here on the cam gear is supposed to line up with the hole here on the cam lobe. And as you can see, that's a good 3 teeth off. So that hole is supposed to be right here to line up with that hole. We're back with the 2009 Kawasaki Kx250f. If you guys watched the last video on this bike, we actually picked up this bike for $1,500. The seller stated he bought this bike beginning of summer. There was no issues with it, ran good, drove good, had good power. He said all of a sudden it started leaking coolant bad, it was low on power, and it was really hard to start. So he thought it was a top end problem. He tore down the top end, put a new piston in, put it all back together, and he said it would not fire up. So I bought this bike from him, got back home and started investigating. So first thing we found was the intake valve on the left side of the engine was tight. We adjusted that. This thing actually fired up, but it sounded horrible, sounded low on power, and it was leaking a ton of coolant. So then I looked further, thinking it was maybe timing was off. And after looking at the cams, we found the problem, or what I believe to be the problem. So the intake cam on these bikes, there's a hole right here. That's supposed to line up with the hole on the cam lobe here. As you can see, that's really far off. So this hole is supposed to be way over here. So it lines up with those lobes. So at one point, this bike probably locked up and seized, and the cam chain kept going a little bit and moved that cam gear just a little bit, so that timing was off. And what I think happened was when you install these back into the bike, you make that dot up and down and that dot parallel to the surface of the head. So when you do that, you can see the cam lobes are pointing in the wrong direction. So that means that your valves are opening and closing at the wrong time, just a little bit, which would make the timing off on this bike. The exhaust cam actually looked really good. Decompression mechanism was working fine. And the hole here lined up with the hole on the cam lobe. So the timing for the exhaust cam was spot on. It was just the intake cam that was off. So I'm thinking the whole problem was the intake cam. So what we did was order up some new cams. These are stage 1 hot cams. And as you can see, this dot, or this hole in the cam gear, actually lines up perfectly with the lobe here. See, you look down it, it lines up perfectly. The old one, you can see, did not. So I'm pretty sure that was our problem. Then we bought the exhaust cam to match. It's a hot cams, stage 1. So you've got the decompression mechanism working, and the lobes are perfectly aligned with that dot, or the hole. So I think those new cams are going to work out for us. We're hoping that fixes our problem, but we don't know until we get them installed. So we got those. We got a new oil filter for this bike. The one they put in was all ripped up and not good. And then we got a new radiator cap. So we were also having a problem with a leaking radiator, and it was leaking out the overflow. So a lot of people in the comments said get rid of that cap, that aftermarket cap on here, and replace it with a simple standard one. They said it probably isn't sealing properly. A lot of people have that problem on these bikes. So we're gonna try replacing the cap too, and hopefully that gets rid of our leaking coolant problem. But yeah, we're gonna try everything out today, and hopefully by the end of the video, we have a nice running, riding, reliable bike that's easy to start and has good power. So let's get going with this, and hopefully by the end of the video, we'll be ripping this thing around. This is kind of where we left off last video. We took the cams out, and these valves were both adjusted properly. This one was just a little bit off. This one was actually really tight, so we had to adjust that one a lot. The exhaust valves were perfect, so valves should all be within spec. We're going to check them once we install the new cams, just to make sure. But let's get this thing to top dead center and kind of go from there. All right, we're going to hold the cam chain in our left hand and turn this thing over. We're looking for a line here. All right, I think we found it. It's pretty close. All right, so on this machine, there's actually 3 lines on the flywheel. So as you can see, we're lined up with that line. There it is, right there. So there's another line right below that line, be a 1/4 of an inch below that line. That is not the line you want. You want the line, the second line, to the right of that line. And then there's another line further down that's not for the timing. So you want to go to the second line on the flywheel there, close together. So then you're perfectly at top dead center, and we can get these cams in. So bearings feel good. We're gonna install these with those bearings on. I like to start with the exhaust cam first here. So there's a couple dots on the cam gear, and I'll show you guys that in a second. You want these dots to be parallel with the surface of the head, and then another dot to be pointing pretty much straight up here. So we're close. Let's see, are we pretty close there? No, we're like 1 tooth off. I think we're pretty close there. Let's see. So you can see the dot right there is perfectly parallel to the surface of the head. And there's a dot right there that points pretty much straight up there. So that's what that exhaust cam should look like. And then you can come over here and you can see that the lobes are pointing towards the front of the bike. And the angle of the lobes, probably a 30-degree angle, pointing up. All right, now the intake cam going in. All right, it's the same thing. There's gonna be a dot pointing up, and a dot going parallel with the surface here. Make sure we're still on our top dead center mark. Let's see. in the tensioner hole and tension that chain to make sure that that dot right there is parallel with the surface of the head. And we look pretty good right there. So as you can see, the dot right there is parallel with the surface of the head. And when you tension that chain, it'll come back a little bit. And then the lobes are pointing towards the back of the bike. You can see the lobes angle is the same angle as the exhaust lobes. That 30-degree angle pointing like that. So that's looking pretty good. All right, these go on. Valve clearance specs for the intake are going to be 4 thousandths to 6 thousandths of an inch, and for the exhaust it's going to be 7 to 9 thousandths of an inch. So we're going to start out at 5 here for the intake, just see if that slides in, and we'll be good to go. I set them to 5 last video. Just slides in there, feels good. Just grabs there, that feels good. And we'll go to 8 thousandths here. Just slides in. Just slides in, perfect. All right, now that the valve clearance is spot on, timing spot on, we can get the cam chain tensioner in. So with this one, there's a little spring here that pushes out the rod like that. And you just compress that spring with the bolt here. So as you twist that in, it elongates that and tensions the chain. So we'll take that out for now. To get that back out, you just flip that up, push that in, and then you can install it that way. So this goes in just like this, like that, and then you can just go ahead and tighten this down. Alright, now we can put our little rod in with the spring, and that should tension our chain. You can hear that extension clicking out as you twist that bolt in. All right, good to go. All right, now we're gonna check our timing. We're gonna rotate the engine over a few times and make sure our timing is spot on here. Make sure that the tensioner is working here. Should be like right there. See, our dot is perfect, and that dot is perfect. So timing is spot on. Cam chain's nice and tight. so we can get the valve cover back on. Alright, let's change up this radiator cap here. See if that was maybe the problem. That one doesn't look bad, but maybe it was. Alright, we're going to change out this oil filter here. Alright, you've got your spring there. Doesn't look horrible, but it's broken right there. Not the worst one I've ever seen. Get that cleaned out. Hopefully there's no flakes in here. No, very clean. If there were flakes, that's kind of a telltale sign that the bottom end is going. Alright, brand new K9 going in. Alright, you've got the O-ring. We're going to oil that up. That goes down, in, locks in place. Got your spring. Butts up against there. And just push that on. Alright, looking at the window here, you can see oil is at the low mark. So we're going to fill that up to the high mark there. Alright, we're just going to be using 10W40 wet clutch oil. That's what that looks like. Dump that in and we're going to be watching this window here. Still low. Just a tad more, we should be good. Check out the mark here. You can see oil is all the way to the top line. That's where you should be. All right, here we go, moment of truth. New cams are in there, valves are adjusted, got gas going to the carburetor. Let's see if she fires up. fire right up. We're not leaking any coolant, so either the timing being on or that new radiator cap fixed our problem there. It's idling pretty high right now, so what we're gonna do is adjust the fuel screw out just a little bit so more fuel is going in. Because right now I think too much air is coming in. There we go, idling pretty good now. Pretty good. Idle takes a sec to come back down. For some reason. We're gonna work on that a little bit, but it's idling pretty low once it comes back down. So I think what's happening right now is it's hanging on that idle just a little bit because the accelerator pump's squirting fuel in there, and it's squirting a lot. The leak screw in the bowl was bypassed, so they blocked that off. So when you squirt from the accelerator pump, none of that extra fuel can go back into the carb. So it's all burning off. So I think what happens is you squirt from the accelerator pump, it's burning off all that excess fuel, and then once it burns that off, it goes back down to idle. We tried adjusting the fuel screw, multiple settings, didn't really do anything. So we set that back to the original setting, and yeah, it's doing the same thing. So I don't think it's a big issue. We checked for air leaks, there's no air leaks anywhere. So we'll ride it like that, see if it goes away. If not, it's probably just the accelerator pump and the issue of the leak jet being bypassed. All right, we got all the plastics back on, gas tank back on, seat back on. Everything's good to go. This thing probably hasn't started for about an hour, so let's see how it starts cold here. All right, first kick. Doesn't get much better than that. So that was cold start, first kick. Pretty good. So I think she is complete and completely fixed. So we'll see if it moves here on the first test drive since getting this bike. Should be interesting. But yeah, looking pretty clean. Really nice bike. I did notice the handlebars were bent. So, looks like it got crashed at one point. Yeah, the triple tree is bent right here. So, I think feeling somebody laid it down pretty hard on this side at one point. Well, I decided to take a couple laps around the house, and the first ride did not go as planned. So it started out good, and then when you hit maybe quarter throttle, it breaks up, it goes round, 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 like it's like jerking. So that keeps on happening. I don't know what's going on. Carburetor is perfect. It's getting gas, timing's perfect, valves are perfect. So something's going on. I hope it's not electrical, but it very well could be. We put the new coil on there. We might switch back to the old coil and see if that fixes our problem. But it's like really jerky. Oh, and you guys probably can hear like a little ticking noise on startup on this thing. Those are the hot cams in there. Hot cams are very noisy when you install them. Same with like a 400EX, the hot cams are so loud. It sounds like a valve ticking, but it's really just the hot cams. So that's not something to be worried about before anyone comments. All right, I just want to make sure we're getting good gas flow here quick. I did change out the gas line. So I just want to make sure that's working. All right, we're gonna turn it on. Gas flow looks pretty good. So that's not an issue at all. Just again, make sure there's no water in the gas. That looks good. Take the gas cap off. We're gonna blow through this line, make sure it's venting. Yep. So that is venting. All right, let's see what this plug looks like. And we're gonna change out this coil. This is an aftermarket coil. This kind of looks like a cheapy one. So we'll see what's going on. Definitely could be the spark plug too. We're a bit black. We might be a bit rich. You can see. Might be a tad rich. We're definitely not lean. All right, we're gonna throw a new plug in there. We're gonna put the old coil back on. So here's the old one. Let's get the new one off. Sometimes those cheaper coils can fail. There we go. Let's see if that makes a difference. All right, looks like coil and spark plug did not fix their problem. Still doing the same thing. Still kind of like boggy and like bucking me off at like just past quarter throttle. So we're gonna try something different. We'll try adjusting the fuel screw, and we might have to adjust the needle as well. All right, so we're gonna check the needle position. I think that's running rich, so we might have to lower that needle clip position a little bit, because mid-range seems a little boggy. Alright, you just take out that little cap that's in there. Now the needle can come out of there. I don't know if that might be aluminum. We have to go through this side over here. There we go. We're actually right in the middle of the needle clip position. So, what do we do? I think it's running rich based on the plug. We'll take out the plug again. This is that new plug that was in there, and we'll check that. If that's really rich, then we can move that needle clip position up so it lowers the needle down further and makes it leaner. The last plug we took out was pretty carboned up. She's really black, so it's running rich for sure. So what we can do is take this needle clip position and we're going to raise it up 2 notches. All right, you can see it's raised up. Now what that does is it lowers the needle further into the jet, so then less fuel can get through the passageway. So we can drop that back in. Hopefully that solves our issue. Well, looks like the needle clip position, raising that fixed our mid-range problem. No longer does that weird bogging mid-range. So we took care of that problem. It is popping a little bit on deceleration, which typically means that your pilot is too lean or that your air screw is turned in too far. We're at 2 turns right now. We're gonna turn that out another turn and see if that deceleration popping goes away. I'm hoping it does. Typically that popping means a lean condition on these bikes. We were rich at the needle, and I guess we were lean at the pilot. But yeah, it's going pretty good. This thing wheelies in first gear like crazy. I cannot keep the front end down. The stage 1 hot cam is supposed to add a ton of mid-range power, which we definitely feel. So yeah, it's a fast, powerful bike. All right, it's popping still just a tad. I want to see if our plugs are a little cleaner here. Now that we changed out that needle position. You can see that tip's getting a little bit leaner. See that? So we're just gonna leave it the way it is. We got rid of that mid-range bog. We just have to fix the popping. And I'm thinking it's that exhaust leak. Let's try to get a clamp on the exhaust and see if we can get that to close up here. I'm thinking there's an exhaust leak right here. As you can see, there's really no gasket there. It's just pipe on pipe. So I'm gonna see if I can get a clamp around there and at least clamp that down a little bit. See if that helps. I don't think this is gonna do a whole lot until we can get a gasket for that. But we'll see. Maybe it'll be enough. Let's see if that pipe still moves a little bit. Oh, not really. I don't want to bust it. That feels pretty tight now. One more crank on it. Oh, it's still moving in there. Shoot. Yeah, we need like a new fitting there. That is not clamping. We'll see if it helps a little bit, but I'm pretty sure there's an exhaust leak there, and that's why we're hearing that little popping on deceleration. I believe it's jetted properly though. Made it out to the land with the Kawasaki Kx250f. Let's see what she can do. first ride went pretty good. Runs and drives great. Not a single issue besides the popping on deceleration, which I'm pretty sure is the exhaust leak right here. So I think there's supposed to be like a fitting in there connecting the two pipes together. But I think once you get that popping would go away. We're going to check the plug to make sure that's not white. I don't want it running too lean, but everything else on this bike is good to go. Suspension feels good, shifts through all the gears smoothly, has great power, wheelies first, second, third gear easily. I think those hot cams really add a lot of power to that mid-range. But yeah, it pulls hard. It pulls really hard. Right. Just gonna quick check the oil, make sure that's not milky. Kind of hard. There we go, right down in here. Yeah, very clear. So we know that the water pump seals are good. Check this plug one more time. Just want to make sure it's not running too lean. The only part I don't like is a little popping on deceleration, which I'm thinking is that exhaust leak. Pretty sure it is. But let's check the plug just to make sure it's not too white. If it's a little black, that's fine. Oh yeah. It's definitely cleaner than it was before. So it's definitely leaned out from when we checked it last, but it's not too lean. So the plug looks pretty good. The temperature change doesn't help with jetting this bike. It's a little difficult. The previous owner jetted it for summer when it was 85 degrees, and right now it's like 40 degrees. So it's a little tough to jet it right now, but we're pretty darn close. No bogging at all on this bike. Doesn't break up at all. So I think we're pretty close. Well, we finally solved the mystery on the 2009 Kawasaki Kx250f. And the main culprit that was causing all the issues that everybody overlooked was the intake cam. So that actually spun that gear on the shaft. Not sure how it happened. I'm sure it locked up at one point. But that caused the timing to be off, causing this whole bike to run like crap. And that was the main issue. The other issue was the tight intake valve on the left-hand side. That was extremely tight, and that caused the bike not to even run. So once we figured that out, the bike ran, but ran crappy. And then once we changed out the cam, the bike now runs great with no issues. So the combination of those two things really caused this bike not to run. And I actually let the seller know what the issue was, because he was really invested in this bike and he could not solve the issue. I think he said he spent like 3 months trying to diagnose this thing and he could not figure it out. So I let him know what the problem was, and he actually told me he wants to buy the bike back. So I bought this thing for 1,500 bucks. I said he can have it back for 1,500 bucks plus the cost of the parts. I think I spent like 180 bucks on the cams. I think like 20 bucks on the new radiator cap, and then like another 17 on the oil filter. So he can probably have it back for $1,750, and he wants it back because he's got like $3,000 invested in this bike. So hopefully he's happy with that and he can ride this bike for many years to come. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed picking this thing up for 1,500 bucks, diagnosing it, finding the issue, and then taking it for the first ride. Always very satisfying finding these mystery bikes and solving the problem. So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing. Stay tuned for next video, and until next time, we are out.